Hello YouTube, this is Matt Wicks here with a Workbench video. Now back at the end of October I did a review on the Rivet H-Class produced by Hornby, which you can see in front of us here. This is number 308. Of course, being the Bluebell Model Railway channel, I would like 263, and I think a few of you know that possibly Hornby will do this as a Collectors Club edition model, which will be released via their Collectors Club, and that will possibly be announced over the Warley weekend. However, I don't want to spend an extra £40 to join the club, and I don't want to spend the additional money to buy the model, which is probably going to be retailing around £119.99, whereas I purchased this one for £84. So what are the differences between this model and 263, which is the H-Class preserved on the Bluebell line? So the differences are small but still noticeable. For starters, there's a bit of lining and decoration on the side of the roof between the side and the top of the range strip, which is usually filled in with green, a black line at the top, yellow and red as well, with a light green, same shade as the lining on the side tanks here. So that's the first part. The second part is a little bit of a model maker's thing to do, and a little part to make. There's also a pipe which is missing on the locomotive. If we look at it from this side, on here, from the cab to just behind the safety valve cover, there is a pipe leading from here and joining up to a adapter, and then another wire or another rod going off towards the cab. Now I'm not sure if this camera will allow me to do it, but I'm going to try. That's as close as I can get, but you can see on the corner of the cab window there's a small black dot. You might be able to see it. I just used a blob of solder just to sort of direct you to it. You can see just on the tip there's a black dot. There's also one on the other side. Now, for those of you who are buying the BR push-pull version, that has a similar attachment in that area on the other side of this safety valve, which runs to the push-pull gear and pump on the front. But on this side there is a pipe running from just next to this little extension or extrusion here from the cab, running round and then up to the top, with a wire running from that to the cab. Now those have been deliberately left for reasons, obviously, for either other production models like the Southern and the BR versions, which both have this piece of pipework. But the Southeastern Chatham one does not have it. So that's another part that needs to be made. I zoom out again. A little while ago I've been making bits and pieces, but you might not be able to see this because it's just in front of the locomotive here, but if I squeeze it down a little bit just so you can see. Now this I've made out of various bits and pieces. Holding the copper and the brass is a basically a handrail knob holder. I've cross-drilled it to add a piece of 0.45 millimeter brass wire, and this bit will go into the cab. I've got some copper wire here as well, which I have purchased from, I think it's a jewellery shop online somewhere. You can get it in various different thicknesses. You can also get it from Hobbycraft as well. And I have soldered that onto the handrail holder, and that can be bent round and a hole drilled, if you're feeling brave, in the cab to place and glue the copper wire, and that will fix that little problem. So apart from a bit of lining and some boiler fittings which are missing, there's also other bits of lining missing which are on the buffer housings, which I'll probably put right, the yellow and the red. You can buy that from HMRS, but also we need to renumber the loco from 308 to 263. The way to do this is you have to buy transfers, and on the South Eastern Chatham locomotives they're usually polished brass. Now you can get the numbers off the Southern Railway Monsell sheet from HMRS, as I mentioned before. You can get these in press fix, and you just need to remove the numbers carefully and replace with the new transfers, which I'll show you how to do that in a minute, and we'll add this sort of adding and changing bits on this locomotive bit by bit, so it's a little bit like a workbench. Now the bunker numbers, you can see here are printed in a gold or brass colour, which is fine, but really I need to remove these as well to change the number to 263. So there's several processes, and if you look back through the workbench videos I've done, I show you how to renumber various locos. You can remove it with thinners on a cotton bud, stab it on, let it soak in, and then very carefully rub off the numbers. Secondly, you can use the back of a scalpel blade just to remove the print on the surface. Thirdly, you can use one of these, a fiberglass pencil or brush, to just carefully rub away the letters or numbers. That you can use as well. Once you've removed the numbers, where can I get the transfers? Now, Fox do transfers for South Eastern and Chatham locomotives on their website. They are water slide. That is also fine, and they're sort of a gold colour or brass colour. But what I'm going to replace them with are these. Luckily I have some left. These are from Roxy Mouldings. These are etched 7-inch South Eastern and Chatham letters or numbers. You can cut them off the sprue, give them a clean up, and add them onto your locomotive. To fit them, I would suggest using varnish. Just lay varnish on the surface, chop these off, place them in position, and let the varnish dry, and they will fix to the surface. So that's another thing to do. So there's a few little bits and pieces that need doing, very small, probably take about a weekend to do. But what I'm going to do is try and compress that into a workbench video here, so you can, if you can't afford to join the Collectors Club like I can't and buy another model, then this is the way to do it. It will take a little bit of patience and time. I'd say it's probably for medium sort of skill set people who have done a bit of transfers, done some lining, done a little bit of kit build. So I'd say it's about a medium skill range if you're up to it. A bit of soldering required, and I'll take you through it as we go. So firstly, I'll be scarily drilling some holes in this model to fit the new bits and pieces on the boiler. Okay, so let's do the scary bit first, shall we, and get it out of the way with. Hopefully I don't muck it up myself. It's quite scary drilling into a 80-90 quid model, so my advice to you is make sure you know what you're doing before doing any of this work. I suggest to look at photos of the real H-Class, or go and look at it yourself if you're close enough and fortunate enough to go and see it. Take photos of the area you need, look at the real model and see if there's any reference points where you can mark a position where you want to go from. I've seen the photos, so I know what I'm reasonably doing at the moment. So do research, double check, make sure you know what you're doing. Secondly, make sure you have the right tools. For this small job, and very scary job, I would suggest you have a bit of tape so you don't slip with the drill and damage the paint finish. And secondly, these are the tools you will require. You'll need a small drill pin vise, which are these ones. I've got two available to me if I need them, one with an Archimedes screw. Need a pencil to mark the position of where you're drilling. Thirdly, you need drill bits. Two for this. One's a 0.45mm bit, which is for the wire and the copper wire, and the 1mm drill bit, which is for the base of the handrail holder or handrail knob. This will be drilled into the boiler. The 0.45 drill bit will be for making the holes for the wire, as I've already stated, which will be in the cab. And that's where it gets a little bit scary, but we'll see how we get on. So that's the tools you need. Now, if you haven't made these bits before, what you will need is some 0.45 or 0.5mm copper wire, which you can get from reasonably good jewellery specialist places, either Hobbycraft or online. And you'll need 0.45mm brass wire. This can be blackened as well, so you can purchase some blackening liquid if you need it. And you will also need a small or a short handrail holder or handrail knob. This is what I've used on mine. You'll need a soldering iron and some solder and flux to solder them together. So let's get on and do the scary bit. So having a look at the scary bit now. As I've already mentioned, I've got two drills for this. One has a slightly smaller vise on it, so I can actually hold the 45mm drill bit to do the rod and the pipe work on the model. I've also got another one with a 0.9 or a 1mm drill bit in to add a hole into the boiler to fix the handrail holder too, which I'm using as a boiler attachment in this case. Now, as you can see, I've put some masking tape down on the boiler so the drill would not slip. I've drilled the hole, the 1mm hole just next to the safety valve bonnet or cover, and you can already see there's a hole in the corner of the window, which has been left there by Hornby for various boiler tooling differences. I've added the 0.45mm hole just there. You can see underneath the rivet, and that went pretty well straightforward. I'm using hand drills because it's more suitable and slightly more careful approach to doing it, so it's a little bit slower, but care is everything. You do not want to ruin a rather expensive model. So I've done that, and now I'll take off the tape and fit the new boiler fitting. Okay, after about 10-15 minutes, I've now fitted the piece of pipework onto the locomotive or model. It's only slightly glued in via the copper pipe, or the copper wire I should say, and the handrail holder, which is just beside the safety valve bonnet or cover. Next I'll go on to doing some of the lining around the cab roof. I'm just sort of trying to experiment with it at the moment, and I'll add that on after this section so you can see how it's done. So on to part 2 of transforming 308 into 263. As I mentioned on the review and various other parts of this video, there's some lining missing on this particular model. The lining in question is the one around the edge of the cab roof, so the front, the back and the sides. And this is a double red line along the outer edges of the cab roof. There's also the side of the cab roof, just below the rain strip you can see at the moment. There is a light green line and also the darker green of the Southeastern Chatham. That is missing, although I've already done it on this one in particular. So those bits need to be added on. So let's have a look at what paints and what tools we need to do that with. So firstly I thought we'd actually have a look at the bit I've already done. You can see here I've already painted just below the rain strip a green section. I still need to put a lighter green band along the top. And you can see the double red lines along the back and the side of the actual model. This I've done by hand with a bow pen, and I'll show you what one of them is in a minute. But I've done all the outer red edges in red. I've done the part below the rain strip in green. But if I turn the model around, you can see I've already put on the lighter edge there. If I just block the sun out for a little bit, you can see it, and that's done with a bow pen as well. So let's have a look at the tools and the paints that I use. So here's a selection of paints that I normally use for either lining or painting locomotives. However, some of these are no longer available, which I'll say in due course. The paints I normally use is Precision Phoenix paints, as well as Warley paints, which are acrylic, Phoenix being enamel. You can see in front of them a bow pen. This is a device that we use to line models with. They're also called ruler lining pens and bow pens and lining pens and various other bits and pieces. You can pick these up between £5 to £10 to £15 depending on how much you want to pay. But the paints on the left, we have Precision Paints Southeastern Chatham lining green, which is P570. Unfortunately this one is no longer made or available, so usually you have to have a look around on their range and see what the closest one is. Next to that is P575, which is the main body of the colour on the Southeastern Chatham locomotive, which is the normal loco green, and that is used for the green patches along the sides of the roof or just under the rain strip. The lighter green is for the actual main line, which is surrounded by a red and a yellow line. Next to this we have Warley's acrylics. The red acrylic is a blood red, which I use for buffer beams and various other things. It is quite good for lining. It's quite a good consistency and it flows reasonably well. The varnish is just to protect various surfaces when I'm doing various layers of lining, especially for the Southeastern and Chatham. There's quite a few, but the best way is just to experiment with the bow pen first. Make sure you know what you're doing with it. Make sure it's a good consistency. You can thin it down slightly, but the colour does bleed out and the paint does bleed, and it is an awful mess when it does that. So you need a reasonably good thick consistency to actually line with it. So have a go, use it on a blank piece of paper. If you feel confident enough, give it a go. But I would urge on the side of caution and practice first before going ahead. If you don't feel confident, don't worry about it. Move on to the next bit and just renumber your locomotive. On to the next bit. So if you're not comfortable with the lining and various other bits and pieces, it's just really renumbering. It's quite straightforward. There's a few other videos on the channel which show you how to do that on the Workbench playlist. For this model, it's a little bit different. I'm going to add a little bit of something different to it. I've recently worked on a Southeastern Chatham H-Class, which I've been sort of redoing, and the Southeastern Chatham locomotives have some brass numbers on their locomotives. You can see here on the model it's printed in gold 308. On the buffer beams as well, it's yellow shaded with black. So how do we renumber these Southeastern Chatham locos when the numbers aren't really available? So it's the normal process. Cotton bud and a bit of thinners. Dab it on the numbers, just the numbers themselves. Let the thinners sink in. Rub very gently. I don't know how thick the finish is on these newer models from Hornby, but they have been quite weak recently, so go very carefully around the paintwork and take your time. Now I've successfully removed some of the numbers on this model already. On the back here, on the buffer beam, I've already removed the numbers on the buffer beam there. Again, using the same method, cotton bud and thinners. But I also used a cocktail stick on this because of the small area I'm working in, and I don't want to take off any of the lining around the buffer beam. So that was quite difficult, and it took me about half an hour to get it off. Turning it round, on the side here you can see I've already taken the number off using the same method with a cotton bud and thinners. Took me about 15 to 20 minutes, but just be patient, do not rush, because that's when you can burn through the paint and go back to the plastic underneath, and good luck repainting it. So what we're going to put on here on the actual side of the locomotive, you can see here in front of us we have an etched sheet of numbers. This is from Roxy Mouldings. This is the 7-inch numerals for Southeastern Chatham locomotives. You cut these and clean them up, and instead of gluing them on the side of the locomotive, I suggest using some varnish like the one I've already showed in this video. I will then clean them up and then possibly respray that area as well, just to bring it back to the right surface finish. So that's what you do for the side of the loco. They're about £2.50, so reasonable cost. And for the front buffer beams, I use HMRS Transfers, sheet 9 press fix SR Monsell locomotive. These have the yellow and black shaded letters or numbers for the buffer beam. So I use these, there's plenty of them, plenty to do various locomotives, and it will keep you busy for quite a while. So that's what I use for the renumbering. And overall it's about a weekend's work possibly in there if you're committed. And we'll go on to the next bit shortly. Okay, next section I'm going to do is one for the Rivet Counters. Not that I'm one of them. I had a comment on my review video saying there are rivets missing on this model for whatever reason. Maybe on the one Hornby looked at for either on their designs or plans or whatever, it showed flush rivets and not the normal standard rivet head on the boiler barrel. However, on 263 there are rivets around the back of the smoke box, as well as around the front of the smoke box door. So how am I going to do that? Now I've pinched this method off a member on RM Web who's doing, I think it's one of the Midhant stations, and he's been using some Rivet Transfers, and I believe they're produced by Archers. They're quite expensive, but they are quite good for adding some surface detail to your model at a reasonably low cost. I say low cost, but it's about 15 quid for a sheet, so it's quite expensive. They come in various gaps and sizes. You can see here one sheet, which some of the rivets are quite nicely spaced or widely spaced. I've also used some of these on my Q class from Finecast because that was missing some rivets as well. You can see there's one sheet. I'll turn it that way so you can see the product code, and also they do some closer rivets like these ones. I'm not going to use those, but I'm going to use the other ones. They're water slides as per normal, and the rivets are actually resin. So the resin is applied to the transfer paper in strips, and you just cut them as many as you wish, put them in water, and they slide off like normal water slide transfers. You can also see I've renumbered my loco since the last part, so I've done all the renumbering and started some of the lining on the side of the roof as well on the green part. Also, to finish this video, finally, Hornby today have just announced that they will have the actual number 263 at the Warley exhibition, the full size one. Didn't know that Hornby were doing a 1-to-1 scale one, but there you go. And that's just been repainted at the Bluebell Railway, so that will be on display next or near to the Hornby stand, which adds to the rumour that they are possibly going to do 263 as part of their collectors club, or revamped collectors club. So keep an eye out. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I will be there, and on Saturday possibly I'm aiming for. It just depends on cash and getting there and getting back. So we'll see how we get on, but hopefully I will be there in November. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little video of how to improve and how to change and renumber and various other bits to help change this standard H class into one that is preserved. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the next review, which will probably be about the bird cages, or possibly at the Warley exhibition. We'll see. Bye for now.